I'm back. Um, so anyway, it's really good to be here. And we'll start with a short meditation, about half-hour meditation. And then I'm wanting to give a talk around friendship, around spiritual friendship this evening. So we'll move into that afterwards. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kirsten, and I love teaching here. I come as a visiting teacher time and again. So I'm just finding, looks like some folks are still coming into the hall, and just finding a posture that's comfortable, at ease. Taking some time to land in the body. And perhaps taking some deeper breaths, and on the exhalations, relaxing and releasing. Scanning the body and noticing if there's any areas of tightness or contraction. And just inviting those to release and relax. The familiar areas for me are behind the eyes, the jaw, the diaphragm. Just really applying a gentle curiosity to the experience of the body. Just with kindness, inviting those areas of tension to release. Relax. And as the body relaxes, you might notice the mind beginning to relax. Any gripping or tension in the mind from the day. Not asking it to go away, but just creating more space for it to all breathe. So much space that there's no sense of contraction, it just releases into the space all around. And with the body relaxing, the mind relaxing, just tuning into the space holding the body, holding the mind. And from that place of spaciousness, perhaps the breath or the anchor that is most appropriate for your attention comes to the surface. Allowing that anchor of breath or body or sound come to you and be known as prominent in your experience. It's a place of kind refuge from the busyness of the day. Noticing the subtle difference between bringing the attention back to the breath when it has left and allowing the breath to be known when the attention comes back into the present moment after having drifted. As we apply our attention and our diligence to being here, taking refuge in the anchor, and we stay open and relaxed, kind and available. Every moment of coming back to the breath, to this moment, we're practicing letting go. letting go of thinking, planning, worrying. Every time the mind wanders, we have another opportunity to practice letting go. Meeting the breath, the body, this present moment. Our kind, open attention. In the moments that the attention drifts and there's the knowing of that, it's also an opportunity to tune into the felt experience of the body. Has it tightened up? Our old patterns of holding creeping back in? And just inviting that relaxation. What we're doing here is simple. It doesn't require strain or effort that's stressful. Just enough effort to stay mindful. Thank you. Practicing together. And we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back for the talk. So at 6:35, at 35 past the hour, see you all back here. Thank you. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. And I always have a struggle a little bit with the internet where I live, and my friends, speaking of friends, this talk is going to be about friendship. My neighbor friends invited me to come over and use their Starlink account, and I did, and it didn't work. So I'm now in this combination of using my phone and my computer, and it seems like it's going okay though. Yeah, great. Okay, at least for the online folks. And welcome everyone. I don't think I've ever given a hybrid talk before. At least not that I've known that I've been giving a hybrid talk. So it's really fun to feel like I'm in the room with you, and then also in the Zoom collective with those of us who are at home. So again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kirsten, and just adore this Sangha here. And it was actually one of the reasons why I was inspired to give a talk on friendship, was because we had a board meeting with Mountain Stream, and Adam was describing like how many people have been coming to the sits, and it just felt like this excitement around Sangha and spiritual friendship and how important that is, and this longing for me to be with you all in person, hopefully in this year. It's my plan. But yeah, so I thought I would share some words on Buddha's words, many of them, on Kalyanamitta, which means good friend. So just to begin with a stanza from the Sun Sutta, which is actually a lesser known sutta, but it speaks to the dawn as the precursor of the rising of the sun, and all of the things that are required as precursors to the arising of freedom, of enlightenment in the mind and heart. And the very first stanza is this. So bhikkhus, which is kind of practitioners, this is the forerunner and precursor of the rising of the sun. That is the dawn. So too bhikkhus. For a bhikkhu, this is the forerunner and precursor of the arising of the Noble Eightfold Path. That is good friendship. When a bhikkhu has a good friend, it is to be expected that he will develop and cultivate this Noble Eightfold Path, which, as we may know, the fruition and cultivation of this Eightfold Path is that which leads us to true complete freedom of greed, hatred, and delusion in our minds and hearts. And when I spoke last week, I spoke about view, which is actually the first step of the Eightfold Path. And so this is the precursor to even that, to right view. It's friendship. So, like I said, Kalyanamitta it's often translated as spiritual friendship or good friendship. Kalyana, the Pali term, is seen as beautiful or as good, and mitta as friend. And I love this topic because oftentimes Buddhism in the West has this reputation as being a kind of individual path of spiritual development. There's a lot of silence, and we don't talk to each other, and
it can really be interpreted as we're kind of in this on our own. But perhaps those of us who have been involved in it longer know how ridiculous that actually is for our own selves. And the Buddha also emphasized again and again the value of spiritual friendship as this support for the Buddhist path through the entire course of its practice. So not just the beginning, but throughout the entire course of the practice. When I was doing some research for this talk, there's just so many suttas about friendship. It's astonishing and exciting. And another one that's very well known is with Ananda, Buddha's attendant, faithful attendant, who came to him. It's the Kalyanamita Sutta, actually, where he comes to the Buddha and he says, Sir, I found that, he's very excited. He says, good friends, companions, and associates are half of the spiritual life. And the Buddha responds to Ananda, not so, Ananda. Good friends, companions, and associates are the whole of the spiritual life. A mendicant with good friends, companions, and associates can expect to develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. So how is this? How is it that the good friend can be considered the whole of the spiritual life? And I find maybe first of all is what we take refuge in. And when we take refuge in the triple gem of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, that we take refuge in each other through that third facet of refuge, the Sangha. That one of the main features of our life, of our spiritual practice, can be this community. When we practice together in community, we really keep each other here. We learn the teachings from each other. They've been passed down through the words of our teachers, of our friends. I think if each one of us perhaps considers, how did we land here in this room, listening to the Dharma, meditating together, it probably was, not always, but probably there was someone, whether it was through writing words or spoken words, that encouraged us to be here. So that it's really foundational. I'm thinking even just talking to Robin for a few minutes before getting on this call about her practice at the ashram and the karma yoga she was sharing with me, and that's really helping support one another. There's a real beauty to that kind of practice where we're offering our skills, our hearts, our minds to support each other's practice, and the goodness that comes from that. Living this life of mutual benefit. So far beyond self-interest and personal need. So I know for myself also that not only did I have people who helped incline my way into this path, through texts and through conversations, that I wouldn't have kept going if I didn't have friends in the Sangha and mentors. So often what motivates us to practice is suffering. This recognition that life is difficult. We're all vulnerable in so many ways to illness and pain, and we really need each other to keep going. Even as infants, we wouldn't survive without just this enormous amount of help, physically and psychologically. Ajahn Suchito has said that becoming a whole human takes effort. We really need each other in this cultivation of just becoming a whole human. And I think of not just our human Sangha, I often sort of bring my attention often comes to the more than human Sangha, and we need the air and food and water, all of these planetary Kalyanamitas that comprise our Sangha. There's a story I wanted to share that was fairly recent. It was just before I went on retreat, and I had introduced a mentor of mine. Maybe some of you know him, James Barras. He's perhaps my longest time meditation teacher mentor from my first month-long retreat 25 years ago. So he's been in my life a long time. And I had lunch at his house and introduced him to a friend of mine who was traveling with me. And this was someone who had gone through just an enormous amount of childhood trauma. And he was really open about it. You know, James asks really good questions. So the next thing we know, we're having this really intimate conversation about his childhood and what he lived through. And James asked him this question that I had never asked him, which was, you know, it's clear. Well, he said, you know, it's really clear you've come really far in your healing. So who showed up with you or showed up for you? Who showed up for you as a mentor or a teacher or an inspiration when you were young? You know, it hadn't even crossed my mind to ask that question. And then my friend started to recount these stories of a music teacher who took him under his wing when he was a kid, and an art teacher. He's still very much involved in the arts. But I was so touched because James knew, you know, he had this intuitive knowing that to become such a good, tender-hearted person that my friend is, he would have needed some support. You know, going through that much trauma, he needed some kinds of support, and he had it. And I was just, it was a beautiful, inspiring conversation for me around the value of spiritual friendship and Kalyanamita in our lives. Again, Ajahn Sucitto writes something that I think kind of speaks to this story. He writes, so maybe this is how God or Kuan Yin or the Absolute are sending their help, by putting us in situations where we will learn to help each other. At any rate, in terms of Buddhist practice, this is what communion is about. Or maybe this is how God or Kuan Yin or the Absolute are sending their help, by putting us in situations where we will learn to help each other. I find that just so beautiful. There's another sutta that I love. It's the Sutta of the Mango Grove, the Maggia Sutta. And I have heard this sutta shared to teach, to make so many different Dharma points. So it's pretty fun if you open your ears to it and hear it more often. Someone might be pulling out an entirely different meaning from it, but I like to think of it as a sutta around friendship and the importance of Sangha. And it's a sweet story. It's a story of this young monk who is serving as the Buddha's attendant. You know, usually it's Ananda, but he's not there for whatever reason. And so this young monk is walking about, and he finds this beautiful, peaceful mango grove. And he comes back to the Buddha and asks if he can go meditate in the mango grove. And the Buddha says, no, you know, I'd rather that you stay here with me, keep me company, stay here with me. And but Maggia is like, oh, but you know, you get to meditate all the time. I really want to meditate. This is such a peaceful, beautiful place. And please, can I go meditate in the grove? And again, the Buddha says, no, I'd really prefer for you to stay with me. But as some of you may know, if you tended to ask the Buddha 3 times, the third time he would relent, and so the third time he does. And Meghiya is the name of this monk, and he goes off to the mango grove to meditate, but his mind is just filled with confusion and aversion and greed. He's just completely distracted. And so he comes back to the Buddha and tells him what happened. And the Buddha is not surprised, as we might expect. And instead, he offers him this teaching. And he says, well, Meghiya, 5 things induce release of heart and lasting peace. And the first is a lovely intimacy with good friends. I'll share the rest of them too. But I think of it as this moment where the Buddha was really encouraging Meghiya to stay in Sangha, to stay in community, to learn from the Buddha. And he didn't do that. And then to offer this teaching when he came back of, a lovely intimacy with good friends is what helps release the heart and engender lasting peace. And then the second is virtuous conduct. The third, frequent conversation that inspires and encourages practice. Fourth, diligence, energy, and enthusiasm for the good. And fifth, insight into impermanence. So those were the 5 in his teaching. So this lovely intimacy between friends. I mentioned that we need each other for our survival, our support, companionship amidst all the turbulence in the world. This kind of basic level of surviving and getting along. But we also need spiritual friends, those who are really invested in our freedom and our peace to help us specifically along this path of spiritual development. And I think of one of the qualities of a spiritual friend is one who really sees and knows the goodness in us. And I've worked as a teacher for more than half my life now in all these different roles as a naturalist and a wilderness guide and a college professor, and now somehow in the Dharma seat, which is just an enormous honor and privilege. But what I've found the most important aspect of teaching is to believe in my students. And I don't have to, I've never had to fake it or force it. It's like I really do. I believe that each one of us has this innate goodness and potential for just brilliance. And that's what I tune into. And I've done that, and I do that because I've been on the receiving end of that. And I wouldn't be here now if I hadn't had people reflect my goodness back to me, so I could really cultivate that faith in myself. It's such a mutual gift that we give each other, that belief, that faith in one another, and in our goodness, our good hearts, our potential. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh. Our practice should be supported by the people around us, and we can learn how to support them in return. We support them by looking deeply so we can recognize the seeds of peace, joy, and loving kindness in them. We touch those seeds and we water these seeds every day in order to make other people bloom like flowers. And when these people bloom like flowers, we all become happier. So helping each other by believing in one another. And then also the spiritual friend, I think, sheds light on our blind spots and is able to do that because they love us and believe in us, that they keep us accountable because they want the best for us. And there's that trust there. So we're able to hear them. We're able to hear the honest feedback that's given from out of compassion. And I don't think that this kind of honest feedback necessarily comes naturally. I mean, maybe it comes more easily to some than others, but I think it's a kind of training to be that open and to provide communication that's truly offered from compassion and not irritation, and that there's not that fear of meeting the hurt of the other, of avoiding because it could be a tender subject. You know, I love the phrase that I've been on the receiving end of, and that I've heard before, feedback of, you know, I know you wouldn't want to cause harm. I know you wouldn't want to, and here's how what you did may have caused harm. So it, you know, it comes from that belief in the goodness. And there's something so beautiful about that kind of safety, to be seen so deeply and to know that I won't be abandoned, you know, even if I make a mistake, but instead I'm really being held accountable, because of course I would want to not cause harm. So again, this being a good friend maybe doesn't just happen all on its own. There's that practice of receiving feedback, of giving feedback, of understanding that we all want love. We're all affected by ignorance. And then we show up and model this for each other, and inspire each other, learn from each other. I have, again, from, you know, researching a little bit into this talk, I just have like scattered throughout it all of these pieces from the Pali Canon and the Dhammapada, and this is from the Dhammapada. If you find a wise person who points out your faults and corrects you, you should follow such a sage as you would a revealer of treasures. A wise person who points out your faults and corrects you, you should follow such a sage as you would a revealer of treasures. You know, because we need to learn to grow. And if we're scared of being seen or of doing something wrong, we'll never learn from our mistakes. This is not from the Buddha, but it's from another one of my role models or inspirations, I suppose. Adrienne Rich, who's a feminist poet and essayist, and she wrote that an honorable human relationship, and then she defines that is one in which two people have the right to use the word love, is a process, delicate, violent, often terrifying to both persons involved, a process of refining the truths they can tell each other. It is important to do this because it breaks down human self-delusion and isolation. It is important to do this because in doing so, we do justice to our own complexity. It is important to do this because we can count on so few people to go that hard way with us. Sometimes I reflect on my life and just the rich Dharma network that I'm part of. And I read this quotation, it's important to do this because we can count on so few people to go that hard way with us. And I can pinch myself because there's so many people in this life that will go that hard way with me at this time. And I feel so much gratitude. And my sense is that, you know, you being part of such a robust Sangha probably have more of that than you might know. So I hope that you can, count on each other to go that hard way. This is from Ajahn Sucitto again, that the willingness to meet another is love. The willingness to meet another is love. And I think of that with the hard way, going the hard way. There's a willingness to meet each other at this heart level. And it requires courage. And it also requires those Brahma Viharas, the cultivation of metta, of loving kindness, of compassion, of mudita, of empathetic joy, where we're not pulling away, we're not manipulating the situation. We're really meeting each other with compassion and friendliness. And this is precisely what we're doing in meditation. Like precisely is we're meeting the moment, meeting our own experience with compassion and friendliness. It's like we're learning how to love and how to keep the heart open in this practice in relation to others and to our own experience. And it requires this willingness to show up to the truth of what's happening. This practice that we're doing together is continually coming back to seeing things as they are, to not pushing them away, to not pulling things towards us, to not being checked out or confused, but to see things as they are and to meet them with that open-hearted, kind attention. So we're doing, we're practicing this form of relating at this very intimate level, and then we can take that into our friendships, into our sangha. Let's see how much time I have. There was one other, there are a few other pieces from the suttas that I thought were just so interesting. Maybe I'll do this one. This is the Mitta Sutta, and it's a description of good friends. So the Friend Sutta, the Mitta Sutta, and there's 7 qualities, and I thought I would just list these, and there's just a couple of reflections I want to make on them. So, we can maybe, as I list them, just sit with them and perhaps consider, if that's something that you've been on the receiving or giving end of and what that has felt like for you. So the first is that they give what is hard to give. The second is they do what is hard to do. They endure what is hard to endure. They reveal their secrets to you. They keep your secrets. They don't abandon you in times of trouble. They don't look down on you in times of loss. So those last 4, the revealing their secrets to you, keeping your secrets, not abandoning you, and not looking down on you, those feel somewhat straightforward to me. But I was thinking about the first 3, what is it to give what is hard to give and hard to do, and what is hard to endure? And you might have your own reflections on these questions, but for me, as I was working with the sutta, I was thinking, well, the quality necessary for giving what is hard to give is generosity. And the quality for doing what is hard to do might be strength or courage. And then what is hard to endure, loyalty or patience, the capacity to stay with things and not turn away. And of course, we would want these qualities in a good friend, someone who's there for us, who gives us their time and is patient and loyal and generous. And it also caused me to think a bit about our Buddhist eco-chaplaincy training, actually, because I think that one of the hardest things sometimes, the hardest gifts to give, and the most valuable is our presence. And I would say maybe our loving presence, you know, that open, accepting, non-distracted presence. And that's something that we offer over and over and over again in trainings and exercises and homework and activities for our chaplaincy training program is what is it to show up just in that simple, open-hearted listening, you know, for those who are struggling with climate grief or anxiety, or people serving as frontline activists, or those who have just lost homes to fires or flood. And the number one skill that I don't even say teach, because I think we all know it, but we practice together, is that gift of simply listening, you know, that open-hearted presence and reflecting what we've heard, maybe asking a question, maybe offering a practice if it feels supportive, but, you know, really it's just the being there and listening. And that is a form of noble friendship that I believe is so essential to our world and to these times. Yeah. And again, just the beautiful piece of this whole conversation of friendship is that this practice of mindfulness, you know, coming back and again, we're offering that to ourselves, that kind of open-hearted presence. So there's the inner and the outer friendship. Right now, some of you might know I struggle quite a bit with some health issues, and I developed a lung condition a few days ago. I'm just starting to notice it, and so this was kind of unplanned. Actually, a lot of my talks, a lot of what I share is unplanned. But this is I didn't think I was going to mention my lung thing, but I'm just reflecting now that one thing I've learned that's been so valuable over the years of contending with illness and physical pain in my body is what it is to accompany myself and not abandon myself in it. And sometimes just, you know, putting my hand on my heart and reminding myself, oh, I am here now in this. I'm here with myself. I'm accompanying myself in this. You know, that has actually carried me through so many hard times, just being here for myself. So it's like this friendship can come in and go out, and you know, it really knows no container. Let's see. You know, maybe I'll just end with this poem by Derek Walcott, which speaks to that, which speaks to the inner and outer friendship, that Kalyanamita, this practice of Kalyanamita, as I've mentioned, it's a practice, you know, learning to listen, learning to believe in each other, hold each other accountable, really trust each other and feel the nourishment of refuge in spiritual friendship and Sangha. And this poem, Love After Love, and it speaks to, you know, what it is to turn that form of loving friendship and presence towards our own selves. And I never want to forget that, like in giving talks like this, or, you know, in my own practice, just how important it is to not leave ourselves out of our own loving hearts. So this is the poem. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Feel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Thank you for listening to those words, and we do have a little time for questions or reflections, and I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Kirsten. If you have a question on Zoom, you can just raise your hand using the reaction button. And if you're in person, you can raise your hand and Jen will come over and give you the microphone. And we have a question from Priscilla, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself. And for those of you in the hall, if you have a question, please remember to state your name so we know who we're speaking to.
I just want to thank you, Kirsten, so much for this talk, because I think it's so under shared. I think that I think this is a lot of what goes on internally, and so that to speak it is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful that you spoke it so eloquently. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I agree. I mean, I don't think it's just an accident that the Buddha said this was the, foundational to our practice. It's just, I think it is foundational. It continues to be foundational. So we should all be talking about it more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was really surprised at how much the Buddha said, these very, specific values around it. So that to me increases its value, even though I've always felt it was valuable. But
That's great.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, if you do a search in the suttas, it's just, there's so much there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Anyone in the Zoom front have a question or comment? Or anyone, I'm sorry, in person in the hall?
Hi, this is Jen from the hall. No, I think the hall's listening carefully. No questions yet.
Thank you, Jen.
Actually, I have a question. Kirsten, I was kind of listening for the word intimacy, and I wonder if that's a word you could weave in a little bit.
Did you say that you were listening because
I was
you heard
listening,
it, or you?
I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah,
that doesn't mean they didn't say it, but I
yeah.
didn't hear it.
And I mean, so I love that word, but it sounds like you have some fondness for the word. Can you share what the impulse is around the question? I mean, maybe you have your own wisdom here.
Well, I think what I'm trying to understand is that what you're speaking about actually seems really simple to me. But then when you also say, we know this is a hard way to do things, that also sounds really true. So we've got simple on the one hand and hard on the other hand. And then it seems to me that our culture isn't very good at supporting intimacy.
Right.
And so
That's
I'm
right.
just kind of looking at those intersections in my am I thinking?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's right. There's, isn't it kind of a sort of well-known trope that we're afraid of intimacy, right? That there's sort of an assumption that intimacy is scary. And I think that it can't, I mean, it's vulnerable to be really open with someone because we're very undefended. But this is oh gosh, should I share this story? I don't know, but maybe I'll let it go for now. If there's no other questions, I'll share it. But I do think that that what you're pointing to of, simple but not easy, it kind of permeates the entire Buddhist practice, and that there's these moments of I think in our practice where insight will come and we'll really realize, like, oh, it's so simple. Like, why have I been hanging on to that for so long? And some of that is just these old conditioned defense patterns that I think, they get built up very wisely when we're young, because things did hurt when we were younger, when we were made fun of, or we were neglected, or, there's countless ways in which the system starts to kind of put up defenses to not get hurt again. But so much of this practice is about softening, so we can be, put life through the whole system and realize, like, that's not going to kill us, that our survival isn't contingent upon being liked, for example, so yeah, I don't know if I'm really speaking to what you're pointing to, but I think it's a beautiful inquiry.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Douglas has a question here in the center.
Hi, my name's Douglas, and as much as I love my Sangha, and I feel my heart is open to include, just looking up on the screen, seeing the people and people's names, my heart's there and it holds them. And yet in my expressions, in seeing people, I don't know if this is coming out right. I feel like there's so much more potential for that intimacy that Jen was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so even though I feel this specialness about our Sangha, it feels like there's more to explore there.
Yeah, I think there's always more to explore, and I love that you're naming that. Maybe there's maybe that can open some doors here, for how things could be, how there could be more opportunities to support one another on the spiritual path. Yeah, there's I know sometimes people have partners for the RAIN practice, for example. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. It's recognize, accept, investigate, non-attachment practice when there's difficult emotions coming up. But I know a number of my fellow Dharma teachers actually have people that they do that with as regularly, and that they find that really helpful for working with difficult emotions, but also, forming intimate connections with one another. There's all sorts of ideas,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I could is there anything else out there? I can share a kind of entertaining story to close us out that I was reminded of when Jen was sharing. I don't think I've shared this in this group because I haven't really, I think I've only shared it once, and I don't think it was with this group. I think it was with a very small group. But it's been so long now that, but it actually has to do with the sort of compulsion, I think, to close ourselves off from one another based on, you know, old habits, and probably, again, very good reasons that we've done that in the past, but that it's not as relevant or appropriate as we get older, perhaps. But this was, I think it was like my third month-long retreat about 20 years ago, and I had started to date someone before I left. We had been seeing each other for about 6 months, and then I went on this retreat, and I came back, and I happen to love April Fool's Day. It's like one of my favorite holidays, and so I sat the month of March on retreat, and the last couple of days I was like spending a lot of time planning my April Fool's jokes. You know, we're going through integration, and I'm thinking about like the pranks I'm going to pull on people when I'm back from the silence. And so I get home, and this person lived a little ways away, and they had actually left me a really nice card and some flowers. And so I walked over to their house, and we went for a walk together. And they said, well, you know, I have to, this was on April 1st. They said, well, you know, I have to tell you something. I started seeing someone else while you were gone. And so my first thought was, oh, April Fools, you know, and I said, oh, April Fools, that's a good one. And they had to say, no, I started seeing someone while you were gone. And I had just sat, you know, a month of retreat, just this practice is being with what was here, open to what's here, that, you know, undefended. And I had an experience where I felt like someone was pouring different pails of emotion, like water in the form of emotion, over me. So there was shame, and then it would just like go all the way through, and then anger, and then sadness. And it was just these flashes of emotion that my heart was so undefended. And I could feel how there was this impulse to kind of go through the old habit of, oh, that's all right, I don't care, I'm fine. You know, just that's probably what I would have done if I hadn't been primed by a month of meditation practice, to completely, you know, just withdraw and defend. But I didn't, there was no capacity to do that. Instead, I just felt everything, you know, so strongly. And I was over that relationship so fast. It was amazing, you know, just to allow it to move. It was a remarkable gift. I learned so much from that. So anyway, that was something I was reminded of when Jen spoke, and you know, it was kind of vulnerable story, but now it turns into a kind of good Dharma story, doesn't it? So, all right, I like the thumbs up, thanks. So on that note, let's dedicate the merit and then turn it over to Jen for final announcements. So taking some time to find a seat of comfort where you can drop into the area of the heart, or if it's not the physical heart, the emotional heart. Just recognizing the goodness of showing up here, the generosity of being here with each other, of dedicating ourselves to this practice. And may the benefit of this practice, of our time together, benefit all beings in all directions, May all beings everywhere be safe from harm, be healthy and well, be happy, and be peaceful and free in their hearts and minds. Thank you so much, everyone.